Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. For the last year and a half, 3 times a week, I walked past the same bar on my way to the gym, trying to get in shape before turning 45. Tomorrow is that day. Last week, for the first time in many years, I managed to fit into my wedding dress. I couldn't believe how proud I felt. But when I looked around to celebrate the achievement, I was alone. My husband was away on a work trip. The kids, friends, and colleagues were busy with their own lives. Even my parents were gone. Feeling a bit sad, I decided to stop by that bar today. I finished my first drink quickly, and the second one wasn't far behind. Then David appeared and offered to buy me a third. I mentioned that I was married with 3 kids. But that didn't seem to bother him. He stayed, listened to me, smiled, and soon I found myself laughing with him. The alcohol helped me forget all my worries. Before long, our laughter grew louder, and I realized how close we had become. David leaned in closer, but something pulled me back to reality. I stood up abruptly, mumbling that I had to leave. As I looked around, I noticed the bar had almost emptied. The patrons had either gone home or moved on to other places. A slight dizziness reminded me that driving wasn't an option. Despite my persistent requests to call a taxi, David walked me outside. I kept repeating that the taxi would arrive in 7 minutes, but he stayed by my side anyway. The night was cool and I felt a shiver. David immediately draped his coat over my shoulders, but the touch made me uneasy. He stepped closer, wrapping me in his arms. "I can't let you freeze," he said softly. A part of me wanted to lean into him for warmth, but I knew I shouldn't. Fortunately, the taxi arrived, driven by a man with an unpleasant appearance. Despite that, I felt a slight sense of relief. Sensing my hesitation, David offered to ride with me, promising he'd leave right after. Reluctantly, I agreed, finding some comfort in not being alone. In the back seat, I leaned against him, and his arm wrapped around me again, this time sliding higher. His fingers lightly touched my chest. I turned my head, trying to read his intentions in his eyes. He smiled gently before leaning in to kiss me for a brief moment. Then my phone rang, breaking the spell. It was my husband. Suddenly, I snapped back to reality. A voicemail notification popped up along with 2 text messages. "Where are you? Everything okay? I'm coming home." I quickly typed back. "Had a drink after the gym, waiting for a taxi. Everything's fine." His reply came instantly. "All right, call me tomorrow." I rolled my eyes, thinking, yeah, sure, like you really care. I carefully removed David's hand and sat up straight, putting more distance between us in the car. As I moved, his fingers brushed against me one last time. My mind raced. "What are you doing?" We were already approaching my neighborhood when I asked the driver to stop. I got out quickly, not wanting to prolong the goodbye with David. He rolled down the window. "Thanks for the drink and for listening," I said, trying to keep the conversation light. "We'll wait until you're inside," he replied. I glanced at the house nearby and realized it wasn't mine. "Oops, wrong house. Mine's on the next street." I laughed awkwardly. "Guess I need to pay more attention." David didn't hesitate. "I'll walk you there. It's just through the alley, right?" Sighing, I agreed and led him to my house. The alley was dark but familiar. David walked beside me. As I reached my door, my heel caught on something, and I stumbled. David immediately caught me, wrapping me in his arms again, and then his lips were on mine once more. Before I could fully process what was happening, I was pressed against the wall near my house, my skirt hitched up, my legs wrapped around his waist. Breathless, I whispered, "Not here." We crossed the street, trying to compose ourselves, but as I fumbled with my keys at the door, he was already worked up. Desperately trying to get inside, away from prying eyes, I struggled with the door. But David didn't relent, his hands relentlessly exploring my body. Just as I turned the key and opened the door, something completely unexpected happened. Voices rang out. "Surprise!" My friends, neighbors, parents, and children were all there, gathered together. And in the center stood my husband, holding a bottle of champagne. His smile vanished as shock spread across his face and the bottle slipped from his hands, shattering on the stone steps. In that moment, everything I had worked so hard to hold together fell apart, like the broken glass at our feet. My marriage shattered too, into pieces that could never be put back together. Now I live completely alone in a small apartment. Everyone, absolutely everyone, has turned their back on me. Don't make the same mistakes I did. For a fleeting attraction, I lost my 25-year marriage, everything and everyone. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.